Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Adar coming back at you with another episode of Startup Engineering Daily. Let's hop right into it. First, we have an authorization bypass in Next.js middleware that affects versions below 14, as you can see here. So if you're not upgraded, make sure you do. Essentially, what this bypass is that you can send a false header to skip the middleware step. So when the Next.js middleware runs, after it's done, what it does is it sends a request to the main server with a specific header that says that it can bypass the middleware. And researchers figured out that if you just send that header up front, then you can skip the middleware entirely. This has been patched for v14 and v15. And also Cloudflare is doing an automatic WAF rule, which is Web Application Firewall, to get rid of this rogue header that you can see right here. Next, we have Amjad from Replit saying that they're not interested in investing in supporting Next for Replit, which is interesting. They say Next is primarily made for Vercel and requires a ton of investment, which is true and not true. We have Lee Rob with a reply saying that all Next features are supported on VMs, but Amjad isn't interested. He says they don't want to have a VM per app. They just want to be able to auto-scale instantly, so they're using Vite. Next, we have KCD announcing that the EpicStack, which I had briefly heard of but I've never tried, is dropping better SQLite 3 in favor of Node's built-in SQLite support. I actually think EpicStack looks really cool if you want like kind of a pre-built stack, kind of like T3 or any of those, because it makes a lot of opinionated decisions for you, which is really good, especially for new teams or people that don't have those opinions themselves. And they're also really tapped in with Fly.io and support LiteFS, which is Fly.io's globally distributed SQLite engine. So that's pretty cool. Next, we have a new release from Cloudflare. You can turn on this AI Labyrinth that blocks AI crawlers that ignore your robots.txt, which is really bad. We should all be respecting robots.txt, but, you know, the web is warfare. You can add this AI Labyrinth that essentially makes it so when an LLM visits your page, it'll just send them in circles and waste their tokens for their reasoning, so that's always fun. Next, we have a sneak peek from Bun, which is really cool, that they're going to be building in cookies directly into the package, you know, especially with vibe coding and all that. For me, it took me a long time to really understand how to do auth with cookies, you know, because with testing on local dev, if you have HTTPS only and all those, then it really causes problems. But it's great to see that Bun is always trying to make the DX better for stuff like this. So we'll see how that looks when it comes out. Next, we have DHH with a cool little like server pick. You know, I'm not going to use that word, but it looks really awesome. I'm not sure too much about the gear behind this, but you know, he's been talking about exiting AWS for a long time, and it's really cool to see that the S3 exit is going full steam ahead, as he says. I'm curious if they're just using MinIO or if they're using something else. If you're not aware, MinIO is essentially a open source S3 compatible engine that you can deploy with Kubernetes. I don't know the behind the scenes of what they're using, but that could be it, and it would be interesting to learn more about that. Next, we have another launch from Cloudflare, which is called Realtime Websockets API with AI Gateway. This seems to plug into OpenAI's Live API and Google's Realtime API for Gemini, but it's not a competitor with the API Gateway WebSockets from AWS. I believe for their normal WebSockets, you do have to plug in via workers, but I'm not 100% on that. Whereas with API Gateway, you can just call it from any WebSocket client and it works perfectly. Next, we have Groq with a Q, the AI chip company, launching an open source word level timestamp program, which is really cool. I know that a lot of people use this for like auto captioning and stuff, and I have a friend who's really tapped in, so it'll be interesting to see what he thinks about it. But, you know, open source code is always great. Check it out on GitHub. And even actually we have a plug from Theo too, which is awesome. So something here might be some alpha that you could build something, you know, like an auto captioner service with AI using this program. Then we have an interesting tweet from Gary Tan, who's the CEO of YC, Y Combinator, which is an incubator for huge companies such as DoorDash, Airbnb, Stripe, etc. That basically says if you have bugs in your main user flow, the product's not going to make it. I thought it was really interesting. And then we actually had a quote tweet from Kari, the CEO of Linear, who says that actually at Linear, which is essentially a Jira competitor, like a product management platform, that all bugs get fixed in 7 days, usually in 1 to 2 days. I always think this is really interesting because it's so hard to figure out when to prioritize bugs or not, but it does seem that like focusing on quality, making sure that bugs are always fixed before building any new feature is the way to build things these days. And then lastly, we have AI SDK from Vercel introducing MCP clients, reasoning sources, and more. There's a lot in this update, but essentially it seems now that it supports Claude 3.7 Sonnet and DeepSeek R1, which are both reasoning models. So you can expose that to your users, it seems like. You can connect with an MCP client and, you know, add these other sources and all that. It seems like we can also use OpenAI Responses API with web search, but I don't have experience with that, so I can't speak too much on it. That's all the news for today. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you tomorrow.